Hi, it's Nicole, and today I'm going to be reviewing Parable of the Sower by Octavia Butler. I've been wanting to read this book for a while, but I only actually decided to pick it up when I came across Emergent Strategy, because the author of Emergent Strategy was inspired by Octavia Butler, and I felt like it would be a good idea to familiarize myself a little bit with Octavia Butler's works before heading into that book. So I picked up this one since I think it's one of her most famous books. Maybe Kindred might be a little bit more well known than this. And to be honest, I didn't really know that much about it other than it's been referenced several times as being prophetic and sort of having foretold the Trumpian future that we are currently living through now. Other than this, I have actually read a short story by Octavia Butler, and so that's sort of shaped a little bit of my expectations for the book. And my impression of the short story that I read was, I think the story overall didn't quite work for me, but I really liked the ideas in it. I was kind of thinking that might be the case with this as well, so I had tempered my expectations, but I knew that a lot of people really like her work in general and this series in particular. One thing I didn't realize before picking up the series is that it was a series, and also that it was an unfinished series. So Octavia Butler intended this to be a trilogy, and unfortunately she died before finishing the third one. As for the story itself, it's set in a post-apocalyptic time where the Earth is heavily affected by climate change, and America is faced with gross inequality to an even greater extreme than we see today. There isn't a lot that we get from the world in terms of the specific politics. We get a little peek at an election and a little peek at the politician that is running for election, who I think is often compared to Donald Trump, but we don't get a whole lot of that political overview. And it is much more closely following the people, and specifically our main character, Lauren Olamina, who is just living through this world. Through her eyes, we get to see her life in a gated community, as well as what she has to deal with when, for reasons, she's forced to leave that gated community. I think Butler does a really good job of getting across what that daily struggle would be like to live in that world, and also making it really linked to what we actually are living through right now. Like, it doesn't feel strange to imagine our current world leading to that place. And I have read a quote where she was asked how she was able to do that and have it feel so real, and I think her response was something like she just looked at all of the problems that we are currently dealing with and saw where their logical outcomes would lead, and that's what kind of shaped this world. And I think that is why this world that she's created feels so believable. Our main character, Lauren Olamina, is a hyper-empathetic person known in the story as a sharer, and she basically feels really strongly the pain and pleasures of other people. But obviously in this time, pain is the thing that is much more present than anything else. And so she has to hide that, because it can make her very vulnerable. Obviously, if someone realizes that just by seeing the pain of other people, she's able to be hurt. But there is a point that comes up where I think it's mentioned, like, if everyone in the world had the same hyper empathy that she has, then we probably wouldn't be faced with the kinds of problems that we're dealing with, because no one would be able to hurt other people without equally hurting themselves. I love that idea as a metaphor, and I think there is a lot that we can parallel between the physical hurt that she feels and the damage that we inflict on each other because we are unwilling or unable to feel for each other. One aspect that comes up in the book a lot is our protagonist's replacement religion for Christianity. Her family is Christian. Her dad is a Baptist pastor, but she kind of, I don't know if I would even say rejects religion. It feels more like she feels like it is insufficient to answer the questions that she has, and so she kind of makes her own religion as a replacement for that, and her religion answers some of the paradoxes that she feels like other religions don't, I suppose. And that's kind of interesting to see how she decides that, how she puts that together. At the same time, I do feel like one could say that her religion sort of just replaces names. I think it could be seen in the same way that sometimes scientific people call the forces of nature God, almost to make a bridge between those who are more religiously minded and those who are not. I feel like this kind of swapping of names, I guess I wonder if that really is everyone looking at things the same way but with different names, or if it is creating more misunderstanding between people because they are actually talking about different things but using the same words. But I still found that part interesting, and the ways that she feels like her new religion of God being change and that being neutral essentially. I found all of that really interesting. That said, I also found her religion to be a little almost unnecessary, because it felt like she's suggesting that God is change and that idea is neutral. So then I guess for me, I don't understand the need of asserting that. It's almost like just throwing out a truism. And I don't understand why she felt that, I don't understand why she wanted to make that into some religious construct, I guess. Like, I don't know what you would be following or what you would be doing or why that needs to be anything other than just it just is. So I am assuming that maybe more of that gets elaborated in the second book, and I think that will be interesting. I do think that religious lore is fascinating, so if that is more developed in the second book, I'd be really interested to see how that gets developed. One thing I think when coming across works like this that are considered must-read classics, and I think for me especially classics in the, I guess, Black canon, if you want to call it that, is I tend to feel a certain level of intimidation, because these are books that you've heard about for a long time and there's a lot of build-up, I guess, to them. I have often felt like books, even classics, maybe especially classics sometimes, that have that kind of hype around them can end up being a little bit disappointing. I was pleased that this one did not feel disappointing to me in that way. I actually quite enjoyed it. There was something almost validating, I guess, in having someone write about these things that you already feel like somebody has identified these concerns that you have and have really clearly and believably written out where those concerns lead to. I think all of that felt strangely validating in a time when this feels like it's playing out in our real world. So even though it feels strange to think that you're almost indulging in like apocalypse future when your current future feels like it's also going in that direction, I think it can also feel like an empowering warning that kind of equips you to deal with that and to kind of identify the things that we need to do to avoid that. And I found it to be written in quite an accessible way despite everything that it's dealing with. There was something that for me personally I didn't get on with, and I generally don't get on with very well, and that is big age gap romances. But there is a romance that starts to come out, I guess, maybe 2/3 into the book, maybe a little bit further than that, and it's a very big age gap romance that is between an 18-year-old and someone about 3 times as old as her, like, and who reminds her of her dad a bit, which I find really gross, I guess. If I'm really honest, I find that kind of gross, and I don't really like that. And I don't really like that in stories. It tends to turn me off of the story, which it kind of did a little bit, but I was already so invested that it didn't completely. And I think, considering that this is a series, we can expect that that will continue in the next book. And so I think that's something that's kind of making me not feel like picking up the next book. But I do want to pick that up because I was interested in the story overall, and I'm interested in the world, and I'm interested in Octavia Butler's handling of this this future idea, and I'm interested to see if anything comes out of book 2 that starts to give us more hope, I guess, for how to handle the problems that they're dealing with in their world and obviously our world. I think anyone who's interested in sci-fi, dystopia, or the post-apocalyptic canon outside of just the white canon, in the West in particular, would be interested in this. I think this feels as well like a book that I think all Americans should probably read, and maybe more broadly, anyone living in the Americas and probably anyone living in the West, I think would do well to pick this one up. It's not that long, it is very engaging, and it's very accessible as well. I think it's one of those books that feels like there's some amount of duty in reading it, but it's not a chore to read though either. And I think for those of us who feel concerned about the future, concerned about fascism, concerned about where things are going at the moment, it can feel like a very validating read. And I think that there are a lot of works, I guess, inspired by Octavia Butler, and so it would be worth acquainting yourself with more of her books in order to kind of get more of a sense of the source material that these inspired works are pulling from. I did really enjoy the book, and I am looking forward to reading book 2, though with some tempered expectations because of, like I said, the relationship bits in book 1 sort of put me off a little bit. So I'll be aware of that going into book 2, and I'm also a little bit put off, I guess, by the fact that it is an unfinished series. I'm glad I didn't know that going in, because I think I might have not even picked it up if I knew that. I would have probably picked up Kindred instead, which I'm still planning on picking up at some point anyway, but I think something about it being an unfinished series feels like, I guess I'm preparing myself for there to be a lot of questions left at the end. I will probably continue to enjoy the second series, even if there are certain things left open, and even if the romance that I didn't enjoy continues into book 2. But that's all I have to say on this for now, and I'll see you again next time. Bye. As well as just the hype around her works in general, I suppose. Just breathing over there. Oh my god. Lost my train of thought.